Welcome to Home Gym History, produced by Garage Gym Radio. And my name is Rob, and if you like home gym history, you can find more vintage weights and strength history over on my YouTube channel, Vintage Weights PGH. And on this episode, I am thrilled to have strength coach, writer, historian, athlete, Zach Even-Esh. Welcome, Zach.
Excited. I watch your YouTube and your
Nice.
Instagram constantly pops up on the feed because of this vintage stuff. So it's really cool. I even though I'm on all the social stuff, I am like get overwhelmed with it. So I try not to like get too into the weeds on it.
Sure. I mean, it's easy to get overwhelmed, I think. And I try to come back to earth sometimes with the social media because sometimes it's a double-edged sword. I learned so much, and that's how I got turned on to your content. Was actually Instagram. I saw like, who's this guy with Iron Islands? He's squatting, and then just started following you and started getting into your content, going to website, all that kind of stuff, and learning a lot from it. But on the other hand, you get on there, and I think, holy crap, like I'm weak. Look at these people lifting these monster weights. But then I got to come down to earth and look around like the everyday people that like I work with and that I live around in my neighborhood. I'm like, oh, I'm doing all right. Like,
I'm stronger than every man in my neighborhood.
Yeah, I might not be world's strongest man, but I'm like my street's strongest man. Like,
that's where it has to start.
Yeah, I'm working on neighborhood. Well, I'm not there yet. There's a dude 2 blocks down looking pretty tough, but I'll get there. Maybe with your help. So,
love it.
Listeners, this is what you can expect. I want to warn you of 2 things. First thing to warn you about, only a couple months away from Home Gym Con. So I got to drop a plug. It's the first convention of its kind, bringing together home gym owners, Garage Gym Experiment, Mr. Jake. He's setting it up in French Lick, Indiana at the French Lick Resort. So please, don't just come for the resort. If you come, you'll find some home gym owners, some vendors, a good time, and you could save 10% on tickets by putting in code VINTAGE. So I wanted to warn you that that's coming up, listeners, and I wanted to warn you that most of what I initially planned for this episode with Zach, I threw in the trash. So I want to warn you too, Zach, that I'd wanted to talk with you about initially. Oh, let's find some parallels with York Barbell, the old York Barbell, not the third party company York Barbell of today. I think that's how to phrase it. Maybe not. Forgive me if it's wrong. And with modern companies, but once I started looking more at you and digging into your life and kind of researching Zach Even-Esh, I was like, I have more questions about him than I do about anything else. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to fire off, Zach questions.
I also think there's just better historians than me. Meaning like I'm in a private Facebook group. These guys have like, all these different brands. And I don't know the years that it was started, this and that, but I'm very familiar with a lot of it because I grew up training on that equipment. And so, and also New Jersey had quite a lot of history. And also, you're in Pennsylvania. So this like, from Maryland through Pennsylvania, you find a lot of the old weights and kind of like the West Coast has their certain weights that they come across, like a lot of Ivankos. And
sure,
if you're lucky, you come across a Zuvers plate. But now, listen, when I first started buying equipment, Rob, I know you didn't ask a question, but I was buying used equipment from a place nearby. I didn't live in this area at the time. Lived like 45 minutes north, and they had a massive warehouse. I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many tens of thousands of square feet it was. Then they had the basement where they would fix equipment, have used equipment. It was kind of like a junk down there.
Okay.
But I would always enter through the basement, and I remember passing like they must have cleaned out like high school weight rooms, old YMCAs. So of course,
that's a dream come true.
Yeah, I'm finding York plates, York dumbbells, and it was like everything was junk to them. So upstairs, I'd be like, hey, how much do those plates cost? And new plates, by the way, were 50 cents a pound, new. So I remember buying for my garage York plates that had like a grip to them, not the ones that your hands go through. Forget what they were called, but 50 cents a pound. So, you're buying, if I bought I remember every squat rack at my gym had like 545s, 2 quarters, 2 tens, and 3 fives. So setting up your squat rack is like $200. No, I don't know, more than that. Figure it's like 50 cents a pound. You know, it wasn't a lot of money. But then they're like, well, there's that junk downstairs. So I'd be like, yeah, like that stuff's kind of crappy. What, you know, I knew I loved it, but I was like, that's kind of crappy. I played into it.
Yeah, I never heard of this Jackson guy. Like, I don't want these plates.
I wish. So I'd be like, what's this cost? Like, that's like 15 cents a pound. So this place, I had bought a lot of different pro style dumbbells from them, and I would buy. Some of them were kind of like welded together with mismatched York and Billard and stuff like that. You
could just tell, by the look.
But I was already imagining who used these. What's the story behind them? And one time, there was kind of like a younger kid working upstairs, and they had a stack of old Strength and Health and Iron Man. They probably had like 50 of them. And a good amount of them I had. But I was like, man, these magazines are sitting here all the time. I was like, who reads these things? I totally played the fool. They're like, nobody. I'm like, I don't know. If I bought, I'll just read them. What would it cost? See if I could just grab all these. They've been here, I told him, for like 3 years. I lied. He's like, $20. I was like, oh my all right, whatever. You know? And then
meanwhile, I pay like $10 $10 a pop for them now. Yeah.
Then I go back to my car and it's like, sweet victory, baby.
I know. Oh my gosh. Well, that's a library of research. I mean,
I love that stuff. And now everybody's a collector, Rob. So now everybody's onto it. The guys in these Facebook groups are selling and trading. You need to find people. They're sharp. But look, I use this not just for myself, but for all the athletes I train. And it's not like I'm collecting some room. I want it to get used. I want to bring back the vibe of the Strength and Health picnic, so to speak.
Yeah, there you go.
And so I use it. And recently I picked up some equipment. Let's go. Let's take your questions.
Well, I just want to catch up a little bit here because you just threw down some amazing stuff. So for the listeners that may not know, Zuvers are probably the most sought after rare plates in the world. And Zuvers Gym, to kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. I want to address your humble mention that you're not a historian while defining Zuvers. Zach, you're a historian. I don't care whether you have a degree or not. And the reason why is that one of the first things I listened to intently from you, I mean, I learned things here and there. I read a post you made or an article or something, but I put on Iron Roots and I didn't turn it off. And I mean, if you happen to know me, see the Vintage Weights PGH comments coming in there. I mean, I went on like a marathon. It was like every day I was knocking out 2-3 episodes of Iron Roots. I was like, I couldn't get enough. And if you haven't listened to, Zach has a couple different, I don't even know how to say it, but podcasts, I guess you'd say shows that you'll do.
Or a video series.
Or series. Series is a good way to phrase it. An Iron Roots series is just what it sounds like. It's physical culture, it's strength history, and there's a specific episode about Zuvers. So I won't go into the history of Zuvers. I'll just tell listeners, hey, we'll drop a link in our description. Go listen to Zach explain Zuvers. Wow. And man, what a great place.
Did you watch it from the TV or your computer? Because now you could have... Yeah, so that's what's really cool about having a smart TV. You could pull up YouTube on your TV. And so I think we did like 12 episodes of a specific topic. Maybe I did, I don't know, maybe I did more. Maybe
and then
15.
You had Jan.
Then I did 12. It may have came out to like 12 episodes with Jan Dellinger where I went to York Barbell. We had conversations, then we toured.
He is such a gracious man.
Yes.
I mean, he'll answer my messages. And listeners, he worked for York Barbell for his career and different capacities. And then mainly, I believe, with muscular development, I want to say, and worked with John Grimmick. I mean, he just had an amazing career, and he is such a gracious man. And Zach interviews him in a multi-part episodic tour of York Barbell.
We broke it down. He's the last living employee who worked under Bob Hoffman. That's kind of the way.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, so that's kind of the way he knew. But you could, if you go on startingstrength.com, you really get a deep dive into York Barbell with the stories from Bill Starr talking about when he would do lifting demonstrations with Bob Hoffman. So like he said like Bob Hoffman would be speeding crazy down the highway, but before he'd like go to like Dairy Queen and get like 2 sundaes, 2 like hot dogs loaded with chili, and then he would go to this demonstration and he'd be like, I am on a 7-day fast and the only thing I'm drinking is my, York Barbell protein powder. He would like lie.
Yeah. And meanwhile, he just downed all this stuff.
Yeah. And
my high protein.
That's the high protein. So Bill Starr said people would believe him because see, back then you only had a few resources to learn from. He said one of the funniest ones was that during like a presentation, he said, I have like the world's most like perfectly sculpted penis. Dying when I heard that, and he said people didn't laugh. They were like, listen.
Okay, Mr. Hoffman. Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Oh my gosh. Well, I was just mentioning on my last episode of Home Gym History, it was an episode all about like things that by modern standards are pretty strange. And one of them was Bob Hoffman's book on sex. That like, hey, could you imagine like a leading company in fitness right now publishing that? Like, it's so far out. And then just the timeline of it. So, it was a fun episode with Manu Parks and Jim, a really fun, guy that I met on Instagram that's a funny guy and had a good time with it. So he'll enjoy that comment. But Bob Hoffman was steeped in lore. He had tall tales, if we're phrasing it politely. If we're telling the truth, he lied. And one of his various lies, actually, I thought of when reading up on and listening to your personal history, and that would be just his penchant for telling about how he came across a barbell. I don't know if you ever heard this story, that he would famously tell this, coming of age story that he was a 97-pound weakling, but then he was rummaging in a dump near Forbes Field in Pittsburgh, and that he found a barbell. It was as if a gift had been given, by the Almighty, kind of thing.
Iron God.
Yeah, like you could picture it in a movie. Like there's a barbell amongst the trash.
I'm imagining it already.
Yeah, and there's young 97-pound Bob Hoffman, and in no time he had a rippling chest, is the way it's usually written. That I read.
Great voice, Rob.
Thank you. That's my Bob Hoffman narration. So. But I mean, it's just one of many, many examples of him exaggerating the truth and kind of, downing that Dairy Queen double sundae and then talking about high protein.
2 hot dogs, yeah.
2 hot dogs.
That's what pulled people in because Jim Steele always says this to me. He said you had to use your imagination back then because you couldn't go on Instagram to see what your favorite bodybuilder was eating for breakfast. You had to kind of visualize. If Bob Hoffman's saying he found this weight in the scrapyard, you're visualizing a kid putting it on his back and carrying it all the way home and then carrying it into his basement. And it inspired you to take action. And now, with the overabundance of information, maybe people are more inspired. I'm not sure. I definitely think stuff is like way too fancy. Like behind you have the poster. What is that? The like 12 exercises or something?
This one right behind me here is the barbell course. But yeah, I love the old course books, and
that's actually great. I would recommend kids do it.
Yeah, I mean, I have been working my way through some of them. I just worked my way through the leg developing course with iron boots.
Yeah.
Just trying out the different exercises. Some of them were awkward. Some of them, awkward in a good way. Other ones I'm still doing. They're sitting over here to my left, and they're great finisher, great accessory kind of thing on a leg training day to just strap those on when I think I have nothing left and do some of those exercises. And I think it loosens me up, a little bit too. So yeah, I like them, and they're cheap. And that's the thing I think is deceptive sometimes about vintage weights. You see all these weights that someone has collected and things. And on one hand, yeah, maybe that collector with all those things, paid a lot of money for it. On the other hand, most of my weights I just found for very cheap. And I've bought some, I have. I paid a lot of money for a couple pair, but the majority I didn't pay a lot of money for.
I see yours. They're in rough shape, and you clean them up. I'm not like. I honestly, if I had time, I just got back at 8 p.m. today, but Mondays and Wednesdays are a very long day for me. If I'm not running my gym, I'm taking the kids somewhere or picking them up. What's interesting is the first guy I came across who was like into it as a hobby was, if you look on my YouTube, it's like York Gym Tour or something like that. Part
I've
1,
watched
part
it.
2. The guy didn't want to be on camera, so you just hear him kind of guiding me through. But when I was there to pick up all the weights, I think I purchased them from eBay. So back then, eBay was more like a garage sale. It was
I've heard that.
It was local stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a, junior varsity Amazon team. It was like a garage sale. So I bought a lot of standard plates, and I drive to his house, and the guy looked like he didn't lift at all. His hobby was taking barbells apart, collars, putting them back on, spray painting the weights. He had the basement. He had the dumbbells, I think, up to 100. I don't think he was lifting the hundreds. It was just like this hobby. It was just like as a kid.
What are you trying to say about me, Zach?
I'm looking at it like as a kid. When I was a kid, people in the neighborhood would work on cars. You'd see them working on their old Mustang, whatever they were doing. You saw that a lot.
Sure.
You don't see that anymore.
Well, so I like working with my hands. It's relaxing. It's because it's almost like a meditative thing.
It is.
Working on the plates and working on the weights and the barbells and everything, because it just, it takes all your focus. So there's a lot of, similarities to lifting weights that, the way you have to concentrate on your technique and your form and what you're doing, you end up getting that nice break from all the other noise in life.
Men don't do this. People in general, we're so busy. And perhaps we're busy wasting time on other things that shouldn't be done.
Sure.
But you see,
it's like the 80s, Fight Club quote you put up the other day.
100%. I remember my dad would come home, and it was like once in a blue moon somebody called him from work. When he came home, work was done. He sat down, he ate dinner.
That was it.
And then we went outside. We'd go to the park. Now it's like, you don't stop working. I mean, here we are late at night doing this. And I think it's real important to have anything where you lose yourself and find yourself. My goal is to learn how to weld. So I think when my kids go off to college, I know I shouldn't really wait to do that. Yeah. But I think you have to really immerse yourself. I don't want to kind of like, hey, I'm going to welding class for an hour this weekend. I want to immerse myself and be an apprentice for somebody. I'll be a 50-year-old apprentice to like a 20-year-old kid.
I've mentioned this guy several times before. I love him. He's one of my favorites. On Instagram, he goes by Jokabug, the lazy old fucker. And he's a Hawaiian dude obsessed with grip training and arm wrestling and lifting and blobs and things, but he welds. And I'll send you his Instagram. You got to follow him, and he welds. And the more I followed him, the more I'm inspired. And it's on my kind of list of things too, Zach. I'd love to learn how to weld and just be able to kind of tinker around and do some things in my home gym. Nothing crazy. I'm not looking to produce anything. But that leads me to my question for you about your gym. You mentioned how you use everything. This isn't a museum. This is the underground strength. And listeners, if you don't know, that's the name of Zach's gym. It's underground. And I'm assuming that name came because of the origins in the garage, I should say, in the garage, and because of the metaphorical, you were doing things that at the time weren't exactly like the odd objects and things weren't exactly mainstream. Is that correct?
That was underground, meaning rare, unknown, versus under space ground, under the ground, right?
There
People
you go.
Mistake that. So I was being interviewed by Ryan Lee, who was an early business mentor of mine. He had a website where he would interview a new coach every week. He's like, how do you describe your training? I said, man, I don't really follow the rules. I'll do old school bodybuilding. I'll do a lot of calisthenics. We'll do powerlifting. We will do, weightlifting, kettlebells. I go, we don't follow the rules. We're underground. And
Nice.
he's like, that's it. You know, you're the underground strength coach.
love it.
Then a couple of years later, I see a grandma flipping a tire on The Biggest Loser. And I swear to you, I said, damn it.
There it goes.
I said, now it's all mainstream. Now people are going to flip little car tires. That's not what we were doing. We were lifting stones in the backyard. I was kind of mimicking Rocky 3 and Rocky 4.
It's funny. I have Rocky on my list. If anyone follows you, they know you love Rocky. Even just the music. Sometimes I'll be like, "What's this song he's got?" And I'm like, "Oh, of course, it's from Rocky. It's like Drago's workout
That's right.
soundtrack or something. It's not even the main songs. You're dropping like the deep cuts."
That's right.
So,
I'm really into it. Yeah, it's crazy. I'm
the
crazy.
story I told with Bob Hoffman finding the barbell. The reason why your story with your gym and the underground stuff and the odd objects reminds me of strength history is just that like there's something primal, something, in my opinion, just kind of natural about like, okay, here's something heavy, I'm going to pick it up. So a found object, an odd object. So when you were getting going, you know, was it a combination of just the financial ease of it, that it was cheaper to find a tire and get a sandbag than it was to go buy some new product? Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of people that I was coming across were doing it full time. They were a personal trainer, or they were working in a college, or they had these like studios with a free motion trainer, and every trainer had a collared shirt tucked, you know, and they tucked in their shirt. And I was like, man, I don't want to be like that. I was really connected to Rocky 3, Rocky 4, and Golden Era bodybuilding. And then I started kind of learning the newer things of strength and conditioning. Kettlebells became popular. I went really deep into kettlebells. I mean, I was training on them nonstop. And it was cool having that bodybuilding background and training in a place like Diamond Gym, which is what I equate to like the West Side Barbell of bodybuilding.
Okay.
And so I was able to blend things together. And yes, when I started the gym, I had just purchased a house with my fiance. The whole house had to be gutted. And the first thing we revamped was the 2-car garage for the business. And so I was buying those used dumbbells from that one place. Ironically, there was like a local company, they're gone, but they were making home gym equipment, benches, dumbbell racks, dip bars. So I'd go there and say, hey man, I have all these dumbbells on the floor. I measured it out. Can you make me a dumbbell rack that's, 5 feet long, 2-tier, blah, blah, blah. They would make it. So I would buy used or cheaper stuff. I'm trying to think of like some of the things. The tires were
well. That's why it'd be cool to learn how to weld, and that's what I love about John, about Jokabug.
If I weld, it's over.
Yeah, exactly. Because he just does that. He thinks of something. He's like, oh, I'm going to weld this together, and look at this thing that I now work my forearm with, or whatever. But yeah, so that was serendipitous. You know, you got this source because you doubled up. You were in your parents' garage. I
started in the parents' garage.
Yeah. And then by double up, I mean you went from 1-car to 2-car.
Yep. So I was in a 1-car garage, but I utilized the backyard of my parents. Okay. So we had stones in the backyard. Mm-hmm. We had a big tree stump from a tree that had to get cut down. So I'd have the kids swinging an axe on it, not even a sledgehammer. Talk about a liability.
I was just going to say, we should mention that you train a lot of young athletes. So
I started with
when you're talking about tree stumps and stuff, yeah, oh my gosh, liability. Get those waiver forms.
Well, today, I tell you, back then, a lot of kids, they mowed lawns and knew manual labor.
Sure.
And then as the years went by, like I noticed, like kids don't even know how to pick up a sledgehammer. And of course, now I look back and I don't really do that stuff anymore. You'll hear somebody like Mike Boyle say, hey, would something you do, would it hold up in court? So the lawyer would say, oh, Mrs. Smith, why are you swinging a sledgehammer in a gym? And so even like, I got to tell you, the kids I train are just, I always say they're not the same. So the tires we flipped back then were crazy big. Now we use like a lighter tire for speed. It's kind of sad in a little bit of a way.
Well, I've noticed your comments on such things.
Yeah.
There seems to be a theme recently that, and I don't disagree with it. I'm just pointing it out that there seems to be a theme of like, hey, athletes are weak. and nowadays, and we got to put in the work. Am I correct in that? That's kind of your messaging you're putting out there?
It's the unfortunate reality.
So what is that just from your experiences training?
I've been
what
coaching,
brings you to that?
So I started coaching in late 95. I mean, we could say I coached earlier because when I was in high school, my friends would be like, Zach, can you meet me at the gym? Baseball players would be like, Zach, write me a workout. So I'd be in like a math class writing out, you know, a training program on paper. And so coaching really came naturally to me. But in late 95, I got my first coaching job at a hospital fitness center. And then that was in the winter. And then that summer, I started training the kids of the parents. And then I started out of my parents' garage in like, it may have been like my third year. So it may have been like '01. But I always say it was like '02. It was kind of like it was my early years of teaching. So long story short, kids came and they could do pull-ups, push-ups, they could sprint, they could run. You know, once in a blue moon, you'd have a kid that was a little bit weak, but he just took to the training quickly and got results fast. And just through the years, the kids are showing up less and less prepared physically and mentally.
That's interesting. So the point they are when they show up, you're seeing a big difference.
Oh, yeah. And I honestly think we grew up in an era. I'm 47. I'm telling you, like, who inspires these kids? I watched Rocky 3 in the summer of third grade, and I immediately learned, like, running is cool. Push-ups is cool. Doing curls is cool. So my older brother had weights in his room, which was downstairs, and I would try different things to lift the weights. So kids today, it's hard to, you know, where has there been like a great training montage? Maybe, I don't know if Creed had a good one. I haven't even watched it. Nothing like Rocky 3. Nothing like think about Rocky 3. He's jumping with the log on his back. He's hurdling over park benches. He's doing pull-ups. He's doing curls. Man, you see that? And then Rocky 4. And that's why we used stones. And then what's cool is I had memories as a kid. I used to watch The Incredible Hulk on TV.
Nice.
But I also remember as a kid, my dad calling me downstairs because he knew I loved The Incredible Hulk. He's like, Zach, come downstairs. And it was World's Strongest Man. So I remember them carrying refrigerators. I remember them throwing tires. So when I started coaching guys on my own, I had these flashbacks. And so we started pushing I had an SUV. So I pushed my truck across an empty parking lot. We would go to playgrounds and do all kinds of pull-ups. I just used my imagination. And then I got lucky when I opened my gym in 2007. Because you mentioned Iron Island. I had done a lot of that old school writing. And I had my gym for about a half a year. And it was the fall. It was like September, October. So not even half a year, 5 months. And there's a big guy outside my gym. But my gym was also next to a commercial gym, a big bodybuilding gym. So, but he was kind of hovering near us, near the open garage door, the tires.
I like the dichotomy between the two gyms.
Yes.
Like, which way is he going?
So I was like, maybe he thinks we're affiliated. He wants to check in. So I was like, hey, how you doing? I see you kind of hanging around. I was like, do you have any questions about anything? And he had like a shopping bag or whatever from like Macy's or something. And it was filled with a couple 3-ring binders and VHS tapes. And he's like, hey, my name's John.
Oh, wow.
I've been reading your articles and watching your YouTube videos. So YouTube was fairly new. So there wasn't a lot of people putting out strength training videos on YouTube. I was kind of one of the earlier guys. And he gave me Brooks Cubic Dino Files, which was his physical newsletter. And then he had VHS tapes with Dr. Ken.
That's amazing.
And I had known of Dr. Ken because you heard stories, a few forum, you'd read about him through the forums. And then I went home and put that VHS tape in, and I was like, oh.
Your mind just...
Yeah, because he was training the Virginia Tech football team in there with Mike Gentry.
Okay.
Then there was video footage from him lifting in his garage. Then there was video footage lifting at Iron Island on 4th of July. I think it's on YouTube now. It's called
There's a couple on YouTube, and I don't know
They all
I don't know if
uploaded it after he passed away.
Yeah, I was just going to say, after he passed away, maybe his family uploaded it or something, because
I'm not sure. I think it's like guys who lifted there.
Yeah.
And so it was called 4th of July Massacre, where they're doing training in his gym.
Okay.
Then they go in the back, and they're like running with a cannonball. They're running with a 225 on the back, or there's like a oil drum on one of those like hand trucks with who knows what's in them. Yeah. Guys are carrying that.
Just loaded up.
They're carrying telephone poles. So it basically, when I watch that video, it's like, there's a lot of ways to get strong, but this kind of strength is going to build a very different kind of strength. And of course, having athletes, you get to see the results right away, not in the physique meaning, but like they competed. So, okay, I'm training wrestlers. A couple weeks later, kids are beating kids that they were losing to. I'm training football players. They start dominating. They start
see the results. Yeah.
Yeah. They're the best on the team. I'm training a basketball player. He starts slam dunking. He's a team captain. He's like killing everybody in conditioning. Everybody was just
it's
like...
It's probably cyclical that then inspires that athlete to see the results. Hey, I put in the work. Look what happened.
Yes. And it was... so I got... I came across a lot of stuff. But here's what's interesting, Rob. Check this out. My older brother was into all the bodybuilding. So he would purchase the bodybuilding magazines. Muscular Development, Flex, Muscle and Fitness. And I had, this is mid to late 80s. He had these muscular development articles that there was like a series of them, 6, 7, 8 of them, with guest articles by Dr. Ken. I never read those articles when I was a kid. I'm going to tell you why. Because you see kind of like big, bulky people, football guys. I must have been a kid, and I go and see like... a bodybuilder who's ripped and jacked.
The shredded, completely dehydrated.
Saying, I wish I would have read Dr. Ken articles, but with no mentor to kind of tell you, hey, this is what will get you strong. Everybody in my generation was bodybuilding for sports. And so it's interesting that years later, I contact some guy on eBay and I tell him, hey, I'm looking for these Dr. Ken Leisner articles, muscular development, sometime in the 80s, I don't know when, and this guy had a warehouse filled with old fitness books, magazines. He's like, I went through all of my spent hours, and I found them for you. And I was like,
great.
My God, how much for whatever, the 8 of them? He's like, $75, so cheap. Today it would be like $75 per magazine.
I can't even imagine.
So after that, I would lift anything. I remember my gym was connected to an auto garage. The guy would like just dump stuff in the back. So I was taking tires, throwing them. I remember there's a video of me carrying like a heater radiator. Nice. I just like pick it up and I'm like Hulk walking it. And listen, that stuff
it's a heavy carry.
It's a heavy carry. It works you in such a unique way. And I remember feeling a different kind of confidence, different kind of like toughness within me. And so I believe in that stuff. I love that
Similar
stuff.
to you, I have nostalgic, memories of World's Strongest Man. I was homesick and I watched like a marathon, and Bill Kazmaier like captivated me, and John Paul, and so many of them. So I just, it was like one episode, and I was like, well, I want to see who goes on. And then, it's just with one after another watching these. So then anytime I could catch it after that, I watch it. And then I just kind of, I came real late personally to lifting and to getting more serious about it. But when I did come to it, kind of like you mentioned, it came back to you. Well, when I did come to it, it came back to me. I'm like, wait, I can buy like one of those strongman logs? That's amazing. Or like I can just like start looking on Facebook for someone with landscaping stones and pick them up. Like, let's do it. So it's fun. The variety, I think it's fun.
Yes, Rob,
I like the variety.
What's that event coming up? The Garage Gym?
Home Gym Con.
Okay, so my buddy Dean Chance, he owns Black Widow training gear.
Oh,
he's going to have a table. So Dean
very cool.
Made me a lot of his early equipment. He still makes equipment for me. He makes all my thick bars, all my neutral grip bars, the safety squat bars. But he was a welder. And I don't know if he learned to weld in the Marines or beforehand, but it was kind of like he had to help a friend with equipment. Then I somehow came across his work, and I ordered, I would tell him what I wanted. I think I showed him a picture of Dr. Ken with the log training bar. So he made me a log training bar.
That's cool.
And to this day, Dean is my go-to guy for, like, if I want something custom. Let's say down the road I'm going to do something in my garage, I could have Dean make. He likes to do a custom thing versus like, hey, I just want a squat rack. No, he wants you to tell him about the squat rack you need where your ceiling is high here but low here. He likes that kind of.
Probably likes the challenge,
And his stuff is like built like a tank. And his bars, I don't train on straight bars. I use thick bars, Swiss bars for my shoulders. And Dean Shantz, he's going to be there. He's going to have a table. And he's a great guy. So make sure you go say hi to him.
I will for sure.
I love that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I will for sure. And I mean, the more you talk about how you reach out to him to do things, the more I'm starting to think it's might be good that we don't know how to weld. Maybe it's kind of like owning a truck. All your friends ask you for a favor.
Yes.
Can you come help me move this weekend?
I think that happens to him. His neighbor is like, hey, help me do this. And
hey, this broke. Can you weld this? My fence is broken, whatever.
He's a sharp guy. And here's what's also cool.
He's very creative. I've seen a lot of the stuff that he does.
Super creative. At my gym where I'm at now, like not even 4 feet away is a machine shop, and these guys are 60s, possibly 70. They've been welding and making stuff. So I had picked up a barbell off Facebook Marketplace I may have been there in like September, and the one sleeve was frozen. So I brought it to them. They unfroze it, fixed it up, $20.
That's great.
They weld things for me, so I have all these old York dumbbells.
Yeah.
They had the Allen key, so I had them cut me ends. They look like silver dollars, and they welded my dumbbells. And then one of the guys I'm friends with in town, he welds my dumbbells. I have a Sornex rack that was too close together, but I had like an extra bar. He cut it, welded another 7 inches on. So I've been really lucky
helpful, to have those welding friends.
Yeah. If you want to be my friend, if you can't weld, I'm a little bit busy on friends now. So you have to be able to weld, and then I'll let you in.
Yeah, then that's the right to get into the gym. You got to be able to weld, or you got to be a paying athlete. One of the two.
That's it. Your only options.
I mean, historically speaking, a lot of the equipment that I find, because I have a small home gym, so I got my rack, and that's about it. I got a reverse hyper, but when I find good deals and I buy everything from someone because I want to get the weights or the bars or whatever I want, and then I have this equipment, so many times I wish I had a bigger gym because it's really cool stuff from the 70s, even from the 80s, the 90s, from the last, 30 or so years that I can tell was welded by like a local fabricator. And I mean, I'll get stuff that was welded on a larger scale and that was made on a larger scale, but sometimes I get these unique things, and I've posted some of them on my Instagram that, I mean, like there's a guy who had a seatbelt on his bench, and it was like a legit like GM Motors seatbelt. And the reason why is that he welded a pipe as a lat pull down, and to keep him firmly planted, he had an actual car seatbelt that he got from a scrapyard on there, and he'd buckle up and then do his lat pull downs. Dude. So, I mean, stuff like that, it just blows your mind, and it's cool. Yeah.
If I could weld, now I'm thinking to myself, like Louis Simmons' first plyo swing, the chair basically looks like the seat inside of like a dune buggy. It's kind of like so I'm almost thinking to myself, like, if I knew how to weld, like, forget it, man. It would be over. Speaking of welders, so you give me all these stories. When I was teaching in the middle school, 2002, 2003, I was training the kids out of the garage, and I was looking in the newspaper classifieds, 2002, and I see a gym for sale in Newark. All right, Newark's not a safe area, but it's $10,000. Do you know this story or no?
I do, but I want you to tell it. This is actually, I have a little segment of tonight's episode called Lessons on Buying Weights from Zach Even-Esh. And I just wrote down lesson 1 is play the fool. So you've got to play the fool, the fool. Lesson number 2 is just ask the person on eBay, do you have the thing I want? Why wait around for it to show up on eBay? Just ask them, do you have these Dr. Ken articles or what?
Oh, yeah. That's what I did because that guy had an eBay store. So
exactly. And then lesson 3 is what I call disperse your money. So go ahead. Well, the Zach Even-Esh disperse your money method.
I see this gym for sale on the newspaper classifieds. I'm saving money to propose to my soon-to-be fiance. And I'm thinking to myself, damn, I might just buy this guy's gym. But long story short, the guy had a gym, and then the other side was a machine shop where he was welding and cutting steel. He welded all his equipment. He welded all the dumbbells together, the barbells, the fixed barbells. His leg press was, he made it. It was not a brand name leg press. It was massive. It was the size of like a Volkswagen buggy. Yeah. The squat rack was in the floor and went into the ceiling. He just went top to bottom. Yeah. Welded massive.
So this actually might not be the story I thought it was. So yeah, I'm glad
I
let you roll.
I knew I couldn't buy a gym out there. I mean, it wouldn't have survived. So from his gym, I purchased his fixed dumbbells that had York or Wonder barbell plates. And then I, of course, purchased all his York plates. But I recently purchased plates from a guy who was a football and strength coach for 41 years. So he had, and he still has some equipment left over, but I bought a whole bunch of deep dish billiards, 45s, 25s, 10s, 5s, and the 2.5s were deep dish. I bought a bunch of them.
I love my billiards. So I like them because they're deep. They're a little bit smaller diameter because they're actually deep. Like they're not as deep as a York deep dish, or like I have these Power Masters from Pittsburgh that are super thick, but they're way better than like internationals than Shizzlers. They're really,
I have a pair of international, but I bought all these billiards from the guy at like, I don't know, I may have like purchased it for about 50 cents a pound. Because honestly, I'm not going to buy any more from people who are doing this $2 to $3 a pound stuff. I get it. We want it, but that's not the real price behind it. And then 2 weeks ago, somebody was selling a 50-pound Globe dumbbell on Facebook. The person who didn't show up to buy it, so they reached out to me and I went there. $35.
That's amazing.
I spoke to the guy was there, looked like he was in his mid-30s, and he was with his dad who looked to be in his 60s, and it was his dad's dad, so it was his grandpa. So the dad was there, and he said, my dad had this at least since 1960. I don't know what brand it is. It's not York. The handle is perfectly straight. And unfortunately, there's no pair. It's just one. But I bought it for $35, which to me,
that's cool.
That's where it should. That's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be selling plates so expensive. And you mentioning welders, Robert Zuver Sr. He was part of the first ever UDTs, which was the Frogmen, which became Navy SEALs. So what was an underwater demolition team guy doing? They knew how to weld, and so he knew how to weld.
Yeah, the Frogmen, later, Navy SEALs. Yeah, they're not one-trick ponies. They're what they do because of their wide array of skill sets. It's not about being really good at one thing. Yeah, so that's cool.
So I think he knew how to weld from being in the Navy, being a frogman.
That makes sense. I mean, probably at least collecting vintage weights and things like that. I get what you're saying. The prices go nuts. I mean, that's why personally I don't.
Too much.
I was just saying this the other day in a chat with someone about Zuvers that I don't think I'll ever own a pair because even if I was lucky enough to find a pair, I just don't have the conscience to keep them. I have 4 kids to put through college and help them with their lives. I put those suckers up for sale, and that would be the first couple semesters.
When I think it was during the early time of COVID. The pair of 50s sold for like $14,000 and something. Yep. So I said, that guy's not married. or he's just making so much money that 14 grand is nothing for him. And
exactly. Everyone has their passions. Everyone has their things that they like and, that they collect. And to a lot of people, it's weird to collect weights. But I have a kind of a policy that everything in my gym is used. This isn't a museum, it's a gym. So I love what you said at the top of the show that this is stuff I'm using. Well, right here too. I don't care what it is. It could be the rarest little collar from a York standard set in the 30s. Well, that's going on my standard bar and I'm using it, So I'm referencing the Hold Tight collars that CT Fletcher sent me. I was thinking of him because I have a shirt on tonight, but he,
my buddy just mentioned him. I was speaking with Ivan.
He's a cool guy.
Ivan Linseer earlier. His dad owns Ivanko, so Ivan's the president. But they just had that a big competition at his gym.
Iron Wars.
Yeah. So I know CT Fletcher has a lot of Ivanko plates and equipment.
Well, he has a good relationship with them, and they sponsored the
curl challenge,
the bench press challenge as well.
Bench and curl,
well, both. Yeah. It's strict curl, and they also were a sponsor in the bench press challenge in the summer.
It's like the pig iron challenge.
Pig iron,
like that. Yes.
So he has an appreciation for older weights, but in a very functional, it's pig iron, I'm putting it on the bar kind of way.
I love that.
I love his passion, and that leads me to one of the things that. One of the things right off the bat that doesn't really fit the theme I thought I'd go with this episode, but I just have to ask. And I said this to Jake, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. Passion, intensity, Ultimate Warrior. What's your relationship with Ultimate Warrior? The professional wrestler. You have a long relationship with wrestling because you wrestled, you coach wrestling, you train wrestlers, and then professional wrestler, Ultimate Warrior. I've seen a couple different videos that it's hard not to just set down your phone and then go lift something,
Oh, God,
you just shared one the other day, the whole, the passion speech he gives.
Oh, I love it.
I love it. And then the one I love too is where he's coaching the kids. I don't even know where it's from, but he's coaching those kids and telling them, you over here, you squat and you do this, here, lift this bar.
So this will be the closing because I have to pack for Ohio. So
I hear you. Go ahead.
You mentioned the passion video. So I saw that. I came across that video on YouTube. And I was kind of felt like an odd guy out in this strength and conditioning field because that was my passion. I'm so passionate. I'm not just passionate about kettlebells or just passionate about speed. I'm kind of I don't know. I love things, into life. And so I see that passion video and I was like, oh my God. And I didn't recognize him because I didn't really watch pro wrestling. He didn't have his face paint on. And then I'm like, oh shit, this is the Ultimate Warrior. So I Google him. I come across his website. I come across his Twitter and I share that video on my Twitter and I tag him and I mention something about how fired up I am. And, he responds on Twitter, and then there's a way to contact him on the website. So I email him, and I tell him how much that video meant to me. He's like, Zach, I've been reading your stuff for at least 10 years now. I love your website. I love those old black and white photos you post, and da-da-da. And so we're kind of would go back and forth, emailing each other. And we always spoke about, family, lifting, and working hard. And then one day he's email me back. We were just going back and forth, email. He's like, just call me. So I call him, and we must have been on the phone for 2 hours until I had to leave. I think I had to go run my gym. And then we wound up just chatting on the phone like old friends, every other day.
That's cool.
On the phone. And I interviewed him initially for my Underground Strength Coach membership site. And he's like, Zach, a lot of people ask to interview me, and I'm just not inspired by their message. He's like, I haven't done an interview in so long. He's like, but you inspire me. He's like, so I'd love to do this interview with you. So I interview him for my website, and we're just like friends now. And so down the road, I can't remember if it was that year or the next year, he was ironically doing this signing / speaking at some sort of an event in New Jersey. very close to me, 20 minutes
Perfect.
away, 25 minutes away. And he saw that I was holding a big conference. And those kids he was training were like rock stars that you mentioned. That was the beginning of a TV pilot. So he kind of started planning this, and he said, Zach, I'm going to be in your area on this date. He's like, I see that you've got an event a day later, 2 days later. He's like, but I got a request for you. He's like, I've been reached out to by these multiple TV networks, and he's like, they want me to do a show where I instill this like warrior inside of people. He's like, but I've had my time in the limelight. He's like, I want to do the mindset. I need you to turn them into beasts. He's like, I want you to be the warrior beast coach, he calls it. So he says, if you help me with this, and they were going to call it Warrior University, he's like, I will speak at your event if you'll have me. So I didn't even ask him to speak at the event. But I said, and by the way, I always called him Warrior. That's it. That's how he called my house. He'd say, hello, is Zach there? And then my wife'd be like, who's this? This is Warrior Man. And I remember my wife's like, Warrior Man calling you? Who's that?
That's great.
So long story short, we just were friends because
that's great.
We had that same passion.
Sure.
And he loved talking about training. We always spoke about the gym. And so he filmed like one of those Warrior Universities at my gym the day after he spoke at my conference. He spoke at my conference. He blew everybody's mind. But when we did Warrior University, the people were not ready for it. They were not fit enough to handle it. There were a lot of like, they were like, he was their childhood hero. Yeah. And it was just kind of like a lot of guys were not physically ready for what he wanted to do. So it didn't go well. He went nuts, like to the point where I was like, man, somebody's going to fucking have a heart attack. Somebody's going to die here. And it did not go well. It really imploded in more ways than one. And so
I see that clip all the time, and it drives me nuts when people don't say who it is. So I've made it my mission. I always comment like it's the Ultimate Warrior.
The one where he's shown training, like he's like
training the high school kids. Squat.
No, they're not high school kids. They're like
whoever they are. I don't know.
I don't know how old they were, but those guys were. It was like a rock and roll band.
Oh, really? Okay.
They were like partying so hard it was
that they were like
they were destroying their own like future with it. But they were getting like big crowds. So he was trying to transform them.
Sure.
But people are not ready for that level of intensity. Even to this day, they're not. He would have been best suited for a small. You had to probably like screen people to see if they could be around him to handle that. And so it was kind of a double-edged sword because he wanted people to change themselves. He wanted to help them, but he didn't want to have to do the helping like where they were helpless without him. He wanted it to come from within. So it would inspire him.
Intrinsic motivation,
Yeah, it would inspire him and then frustrate him. And I think that causes a lot of internal stress. Like I honestly feel that way a lot with coaching. I'm working with so many high school kids, but it's shocking how many are like lacking the consistency. So why am I more motivated than you? I don't have to play football. I'm not the one where somebody's trying to destroy me in football, wrestling, lacrosse. So my friendship with the Ultimate Warrior began through that passion video, which I love. And he was gone too soon. He was like 53, 54. And it all started by like connecting with him through his website and posting his video on Twitter.
Yeah.
And he was like big into and his gym in his barn had old like flex machines, which was a great gym equipment company. I used to use that equipment in the 90s. That equipment used to be in Gold's Gym Venice, and he had a bunch of Ivanko deep dish plates.
Sweet.
Yeah, and Ivanko plates all through his.
And that's cool to learn that. That's what the Warrior was working out with.
Yeah. Yes.
Very cool. I mean, I know you have to go. I respect your time. But I invented something just for you, if you can indulge me for just a minute here. I'm a big Massonomics fan, and they play this game at the end of their podcast.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Over, under, so overrated, underrated. They crack me up. And, I'm not nearly as funny as them. I just have research. That's it. So along those themes, I thought, okay, well, mine is history oriented. My podcast, I'm starting the time capsule game. And this is my commitment to my podcast, is that occasionally when I have a guest on, I'm going to ask them to play this game where on the clock, I got a little egg timer I use for in the gym here. I'm going to give you 1 minute to name everything you can about physical fitness and training right now, 2023. This is our little audio time capsule. And then somewhere down the road in 2024, 2025, when I hope I'm still doing this podcast, because it's also like a commitment to myself to keep doing this. When I get to like your status, you're up in the 300s of podcast episodes.
Yeah.
I want to reach back, grab a little clip. Hey, here's Zach Even-Esh from 2023. Let's see what was going on in physical fitness and play a little time capsule. So
I'm talking about what's going on now.
Name anything happening right now. It could be something you like, something you don't like, something popular, something not popular.
Sure.
Whatever you want. I know it's the end of the day. I know you're tired. So I'll preface it that this is the first time. You're not going to do poorly. There's nothing to compare it against. Like, you're it. You're the inaugural time capsule game. Okay, ready, set, go.
All right, so I'm thinking about box squats and how maybe or maybe not Bill Peanuts West invented them, okay, out of his home gym, which was the original West Side Barbell Club in Culver City. And what they did was they had a milk crate, or maybe it was a milk crate of like steel, not just, the plastic, framed it out. And they did bench squats and box squats, but they spoke about sitting on the bench, pausing, and then coming up. So I read articles of his from the late 60s, and here we are 50 plus years later, and I'm seeing Division I strength coaches touch and go the box squat. And so the box squat is decades upon decades old, yet people aren't studying the history and understanding how to do it. So that's what's on my mind, thinking about the box squats of back then. And then the other thing I'm thinking about is Dave Draper supersets. He said a workout is nothing without supersets. And to this day, if I go into a normal gym, I don't see people doing supersets. So I'd like to see
supersets
2023 go back to the late 60s and early 70s for training information.
Box squats. And supersets.
Bill Peanuts West and Dave Draper.
It's in the time capsule. We're doing it. So
Legit
we'll see.
Time capsule. I went 2023, but took information from 50 years ago. You took it way.
I thought you were just going to say like eggs and Lucky Charms are healthier than steak. So.
Should have mentioned. I should have mentioned the high definition diet, the steak and eggs diet by Vince Gironda is what I should have mentioned.
There you go.
If you go on my YouTube, look up the anabolic protein shake I made. You might not be able to see it because it's a short. You know how shorts don't show up on the videos?
Gotcha.
Anabolic protein shake.
I wrote it down.
Let me know, Rob.
I will. And the only other thing I wrote down to loop back to was the method I mentioned. I misinterpreted your story. I loved hearing the story about you going to not so great neighborhood of town. So leave our listeners with this advice. There's some weights for sale. You go to a not so great neighborhood of town to buy them, and you're thinking, man, like I got my money in hand, cash in hand, but I'm a little nervous here. So this is the Zach Even-Esh dispersal method for picking up used weights. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. So that was another classified ad I saw, and it said something like fitness studio closing, and so they put their equipment in a storage shed. And I was going to Newark, a different part of Newark. Newark's not a good area, so I put a little money in the sock, enough money in the pocket, and then money in the underwear. Because I was like, if I get my ass kicked out here, they'll only get one area of the money, not all the areas of the money.
Love it.
So when I met that guy, there was flip phones, but he was talking on a speakerphone, and I think they were sizing me up because I kind of heard like the dude say like, he's like, all right, the guy's here. He must have been communicating to somebody, and it was like, is he jacked or is he big? And I remember wearing I had a gray sweatpants, gray sweatshirt, and I was at my biggest. And by the way, I was at my biggest training out of my parents' garage with just a barbell and a pair of 50 and 100-pound dumbbells. I was jacked. And
Nice.
I saw him like look me up and down, and he said, yeah. And like he's big. And so I bought I don't know if you ever heard of Perillo Performance.
I'm not too knowledgeable.
Okay, he's in Ohio. He was making equipment, at least from what I know, in the 90s, maybe the late 80s.
Okay.
His incline bench was curved, and it was supposed to contour your back.
Right. A buddy of mine just had one. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's
Very
different
rare.
segments. Different segments that curves.
It's like a segment. Donnie Thompson mentions him
I know
a
what
lot.
you're talking about. Yes.
And
okay,
so
it's coming back.
I bought an incline bench, a Perillo incline bench.
Awesome.
I'm an idiot. I sold it way back in the day because I actually didn't like it. I liked just the flat, but knowing what I know now, it's something I should have kept.
Hey.
So I bought that from him, a dip bar, and I think I bought the utility bench, so the flat bench, and I would take it home, and if I wanted to incline, I put it on a toolbox. But yeah, I put money, underwear, socks,
Play it safe.
pocket.
Yeah.
And so when I was buying the equipment, I wasn't like, oh, I have a lot more money. I said, like this is all I got. So I undercut his price, and I was like, this is all I got. Take it or leave it. He's like, all right, took it.
That's how you do it.
In my car. Victory, baby. Hey, man, I ain't no amateur.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate the advice. I appreciate you being on here, Zach.
Sure.
You got a new book in the works, so people should follow you and work on that and check it out. Iron Journeys.
I can't. It's we've got some spelling and grammar to fix because Word document like auto-corrected stuff, but not in the correct manner. So I have my buddy reading through it. I have another guy working on the cover. I think I could get it out in a month. It's January 18th. Maybe I could get it out in mid-February. We're going to see. I'm going to self-publish through Amazon.
Nice.
So I'm not dealing with other people.
You have one guaranteed sale. I will definitely pick one up.
It's 100% more than zero.
There you go. And then this summer, I saw another post that your encyclopedia, that's going to get re-released this summer.
Yes. Nothing really new going to go in there, minus a few photos that have to get traded out because Dragon Door was the original publisher. So whatever photos they owned, I will put in my own. But they basically were the original initial publisher. But then when COVID happened, I think whoever printed their books kind of fell through. And so there was that. And John Duquesne was kind enough to say, you know what, Zach, you want the rights back? Here you go. I told him, hey, this is my life's work.
Yeah.
I can't have it as an ebook. That's just not sitting with me right.
Yeah.
You know, what do I got to do to get it back? He said, I'll take care of it for you. So super pumped up to get that out to me.
So, Encyclopedia of Underground Strength coming back out this summer. Iron Journeys coming out any month now, soon. So follow Zach as Z Even-Esh on Instagram. Follow his YouTube. Hop on his website. And that's Even-Esh, EVEN-ESH. And this is Rob from Vintage Weights PGH. This is Home Gym History. Thanks for listening. Go back and listen to our old episodes. And, of course, we're brought to you by Garage Gym Radio. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you, brother.